lovely to see such a great turnout for what we feel is a really special book. So thank you for coming out tonight, and wondering if you indulge me in a quick photo so I can get all these smiling faces. So I'm Jill. I'm one of the booksellers here at Water Street Bookstore, and I specialize in kids lit. So I read lots of stuff that comes down the pike. I get early copies of books and I devour them, and some really speak to me. This is one of them. I love that it's immediately relatable and special and warm and exciting and thought-provoking. And yet, at the same time, there's all those things that might feel familiar, the things that you want to feel in a story. There's wholly original ideas in it too, and I was really blown away by the connection that came together for the characters and for myself to the book. It's really a wonderful piece of work. Here's what folks have said about it. Folks meaning Kirkus Reviews is one. This is a starred review. Acutely perceptive, disarmingly witty, devastatingly honest, and utterly captivating. Joyful, heartbreaking, completely bonkers, and exuberantly alive. Publishers Weekly also gave it a starred review. They say, Felix's story is a love letter to anyone who feels out of place, and a testament to the beauty of being different. I think that's pretty high praise, and I'm so excited to tell you that more is rolling in as we go on. So here's the gist of the story. 13-year-old Felix writes a secret blog to try to make sense of it all. Growing up, his first crush, school, missing his dad, dealing with bullies, and fitting in when everything about him and his family screams different. This is all while navigating an often weird mind-body meld with Zyx, a super-sentient alien being with a heart of gold. 10 years after a disastrous experiment bound them together, everyone's on red alert. Felix won't reach adulthood if they remain fused, and the countdown to the highly dangerous, first of its kind, survival not guaranteed procedure to sever their link has begun. So yeah, this kid has a lot on his mind. This story is powered by humor, big questions, answers, and feelings, suspense, and a galaxy-sized heart. And we're so happy to welcome it to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the wonderful author. We're so lucky to have her in Exeter, Lisa Buck.
Wow. Hello. Welcome, lovely humans. I am so pleased to be here to share my geeky joy with you about this book. I want to say thank you to everybody, to Jill and everybody here at Water Street Bookstore. I also want to acknowledge my agent, Brianne Johnson, at Writer's House, and my editor, Alex Ulia, at Viking. And I want to say a special thank you to my partner, Dawn, without whom this book would simply have not existed. So thank you, my love. About 50 years ago, my parents very cleverly left a few books they thought I might like on a low shelf in a library in our house without saying anything about them. And so I discovered, as though it was a secret surprise or treasure known only to me, a book called The 13 Clocks by James Thurber. And little 5-year-old me read this book and was utterly astonished by its beauty and warmth and humor. It's a fascinating book. It's basically poetry, blank verse, written in paragraph form. So if you're not paying attention, you don't realize that it has meter and rhyme. But it had this glorious music and beautiful illustrations. And that book hit me as a revelation. I knew, upon finishing it, that the reason I had been put on this planet was to make up such stories for people. That was my sort of identity moment with regards to this work. Around that same time, I was also figuring out in a muddled and unexpressed way that I wasn't actually a boy, but I was not able to find ways to express that. And so for many years, for decades, I struggled both to express the gender that I knew myself to be in the world, and to achieve writing success. And it is only in the last decade or so that I began to figure both of those things out. I do think that the work was intertwined. I did not do my best work when I was still trying to impersonate a boy and a man in the world. My gender issues got in the way of free and joyous creation of stories. But as I figured one out, the other began to come easier, and the result is this. I've tried to accomplish a couple of different things in the writing of this story. One is to have a young LGBTQ protagonist without that being the preachy point of the story. Felix has a crush, and the person he has a crush on at school happens to be another boy like Felix. But that's not the point of the book. That's not why it exists. It's just one of his details. Another was to depict LGBTQ community. I've had a couple reader reviews, early reader reviews and so on, where people said there's too many queer characters in this book. It strains credulity, which is an interesting thing to say about a book which features a boy fused with an alien. But I realized upon hearing a couple of comments like that there must be people in the world who do not yet realize that there is such a thing as rainbow community. And queer folk find each other, families of choice, group houses, public and cyber meeting places, and there is some of that also in this book and in future books that I plan and intend to write and I'm already writing. Another thing I wanted to accomplish in this book was to capture the lovely, geeky humor vibe I had with my two adolescent children at the time. I remember once being out with my two teenage children in a restaurant, and we were laughing about one of our many ongoing running jokes, and talking back and forth, and I suddenly realized that if somebody heard us laughing at the next table and was wondering what we were saying and started to eavesdrop, they would not be able to understand what we were saying. We had what amounted to a private language based on running gags and in-jokes and words we had made up together. So I wanted to capture something of that as well. And I just wanted to tell a really good story that people would enjoy and that would give folks hope in trying times. I would like to read a couple of excerpts to you, starting with a whole chapter early in the book. The chapters are labeled with the number of days to go until the risky procedure to separate Felix from his alien Zyx. And this is a read-aloud challenge, I realized. When they did turn this into an audiobook, which is also out today, and they actually used 3 different actors from this book, because there's also a chapter near the end which is narrated by Felix's sister. But the voice of Zyx appears throughout the book. Zyx uses Felix's fingers to type. They're melded together, and Zyx uses Felix's fingers to type to make comments. And it'll be an interesting experience for anybody ever reading this book aloud to decide how to deal with the second voice in the text. The folks that did the audiobook chose to do a kind of computerized voice thing. Like the idea was that instead of typing, it was using a voice synthesizer on a computer or something. So I'm going to stick with that because it seems to work, and it'll help separate out what Zyx says from what Felix says. What else? Is there anything else I need to explain? The pronouns get explained in this chapter. I think the pose gets mentioned. One of the results of Felix and Zyx being fused together is Felix's body tends to want to stay in the exact position it was when the scientific experiment went wrong and melded them together. So if he relaxes or when he's asleep, his body retains this certain position. So that's called the pose. 26 days to go. I've been thinking about what Ms. C, a teacher at school, said about details in writing, and I've also been thinking about zero-day procedure and the possible reader later, so I want to try to write about my family. I'm going to describe dinner at the Yz place, the dinner that just happened an hour ago. Before I get started, though, I feel like I need one of those, what do you call them? Zyx. Remember at the beginning of the play we read in English, there was that list of characters with descriptions? What was that called? Dramatis personae. Yes, that's it. Cool. Okay, here's the dramatis personae. Grandy. Grandy is my grandparent, one of my father's parents. But I don't know if it was my grandmother or my grandfather because each week Bo spends Thursday, Friday, and Saturday wearing jeans and button shirts and boots and a cap with their hair tucked up inside, talks in a low, loud voice, and goes by Vern. Then on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Bo dresses in frilly blouses and skirts and pantyhose with their hair brushed out soft and loose, talks in a high, soft voice, and goes by Vera. And on Wednesdays, Bo stays in their room and doesn't eat and doesn't talk and doesn't wear any clothes and meditates all day. At least, that's what Bo says. I really don't need to see them naked, no offense, Grandy, so I don't ever try to open the door. Other than that, Bo's a word geek and loves to knit, as Vera and Vern both. And what else? Well, the V words, I should explain those. Those are the pronouns Grandy invented for herself. Instead of he, him, his, himself, or she, her, hers, herself, you get vo, ven, ver, theirs, theirself. As in, vo owns it. It belongs to them. It's their thing. It's theirs. Vo said so theirself. And a cool thing about these V words is that they come in handy for Zyx, too, since they don't seem to have she and he over there in the fourth dimension. Hey, Zyx, are you a girl fourth dimensional alien or a boy fourth dimensional alien? Question mark. Zyx doesn't do punctuation, so spells that out for those who understand. Yeah, I thought so. B, short for Beatrix. All the names in my family end with X to make it XYZ with our last name. It's a tradition. It's a tradition. I roll my eyes. B is my big sister, and she's medium tall with long dark hair, and she's a piano teacher. She's 3 years older than me, so she's a junior, and she has already gotten into this fancy music school where she'll be going next year instead of doing her senior year of high school. She spends about 5 hours a day practicing, during which she disappears so far inside the music that you can go right up to her and say her name, and she won't hear you. If you want to talk to her, you have to touch her, and then she might flail or snarl. And even when she's not playing the actual piano, she's usually staring off into space and playing invisible piano on whatever happens to be in front of her. Besides the piano playing, B is just a sister, I guess. She's smart and does well in school and has friends and stuff. She's fun to be with sometimes, and she's a pain in the butt other times. It would be more boring if she wasn't around, so I'm glad she's part of the family. And then there's Mom. What can I say about Mom? She's a regular-looking woman who wears regular-looking clothes. She has light brown hair that she usually wears pulled back, but some of it always escapes again and floats around her head, and a lot of the time, the fingers of one of her hands are playing with the strands hanging down by her neck. Her name is Margot, without an X. Brandy taught me the way to spell it with an X, M-A-R-G-A-U-X, but Mom wasn't born into the Yz family. She married in, so the fact that there's an ends with X way of spelling her name is only a coincidence. She works at a lawyer's office, but she's not a lawyer, some kind of helper job. And she, runs the house and looks after us. She's the parent on duty. Sometimes she gets stressy and nags, but other times she's really funny. Also, sometimes she makes treats or gets us all out doing something fun, but other times she gets really sad, and I think she misses my dad a lot, because when the accident happened, he got killed. Yeah, I didn't mention that before. When the machine went off, the force field or whatever spread out in the lab like a little sun, and lucky for me, I was farther away and I only got fused. But he was right at the center of the sun and he got vaporized. They never found anything but a little bit of the sole of one of his shoes. You might think it would shake me up typing that, but it doesn't. I never really knew him. I actually feel worse about him being on for Mom than I do for myself. Is that weird? I don't know. It's just how it is. So that's Mom. And Felix. You mean I should dramatize my own persona, too? Yeah, okay, sure. I'm Felix, and I'm just a person. If it wasn't for the fused-with-Zyx thing, I suppose I would just be normal, whatever that means. And I like to draw. That's all I have to say about me. Say more. But how am I supposed to see myself? Dance, self, dance, other, see, all, see, self. Whatever that means. Typical. But all right, if I could split myself in two and also be standing in the corner watching, I guess I'd see a skinny kid with dark hair hanging down that he hides his eyes behind. Not sitting up real straight. The parts of him that are touching the chair are his tailbone, right on the edge, and the backs of his shoulders pressing back. Not exactly good manners, but I get so tired of pushing against the pose. And what else? Well, I've got an almost but not quite perfect triangle of moles on my left cheek. And sometimes when I'm thinking or distracted or whatever, I put my thumb and my first 2 fingers on them and then basically play drums. My fingers do all these rhythms, and maybe partly that's Zyx. Sometimes, yes. Yeah, I thought so. I call it kebabing the triangle. We don't usually do it at mealtime. The only other thing to say is that an actual dinner with everybody together at the table is pretty rare at our house, because usually at least one of us has a practice or a lesson or a meeting or dinner at a friend's house or whatever. But besides her idea about still doing normal things, Mom also has this idea about the family spending as much time together as possible. So tonight, there we were, all 4 of us around the table in the actual dining room, under the silly 5 electric candles chandelier. It was a little awkward because we are out of the habit, but nice, too. 4 is, 3 is, 2 is, 1 is all, if you say so. So at first the conversation is just, how was your day? Fine. What did you learn at school? Nothing. And then there is a pause that gets long, and then Randy, in Vern mode, it being Friday with suspenders, looks around at the table and says, this is lovely. It makes me wish Ajax were here. Ajax was my dad. I look at Mom because sometimes she wants to talk about Dad, sometimes she doesn't. She appears to be pretending she didn't hear. Bea tucks her hair behind her ear and says, I remembered something new about him. She was 6 when the accident happened. Randy says, oh yeah? I remember he would lie on the floor and I would come running up to his feet, which had socks on, and I would run into his socks with my tummy, and he would catch my hands and swing me up, so I was over him. Mom looks up. And then he would straighten his legs and let go of my hands, and I would put them out like wings and arch my back and look up at the ceiling and really feel like I was flying. Mom does a little twitch of a smile. And me watching with my heart in my mouth as you wobbled around up there, at least at first. But I got used to it because he never dropped you. I say, did he ever do that for me? I have to ask because I don't remember much about him at all, just sort of an idea of a face. And once, sitting on his lap, listening to his story, with the rumble of his voice making my body vibrate, feeling all warm and safe. Mom says, I'm not sure, I think so. You were still awfully small. Randy says, he doted on you both. He loved being with him. Mom is looking sad, so Bea puts her hand on her heart and sings, Feels, feels with wheels. Then she looks at me like, your turn. Okay, this is a thing in my family. We make up songs. Sometimes the songs fall apart, but sometimes they come together, and this is one of those times. On the beat, I sing back to her, over you it steals, this feeling of feels. Bea smiles and does opera arms and comes back in, while Randy puts a little beatbox under, which I was really good at. I have an odd grandparent. Anyway, oh, those feels, Bea sings. Sneak into your heart, tear it all apart, leave you gasping and sore. Which is a total present of a rhyme set out. And she catches my eye, so I come back in. But wanting more. She smiles wider and nods, and we find the duet. More feels, feels with wheels. And on the last couple of notes, Mom finds a third note between Bea's high one and my low one, and Grandy does a dun 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 to finish, and we sit there grinning at each other. That was a good one, says Mom. Bea says, I like it how it sounds with the third voice. 2 voices are cool, but 3 voices are cooler. The middle voice, Mom answers, like I'm the middle generation here at this table. That makes me think of something, and I say, behold, the 3-ness of things. The 3-ness of things becomes a big theme of the book. Felix has a teacher at school who thinks he has promise as a writer and is encouraging him to enter a contest. And he enters an essay contest with an essay about the 3-ness of things. So that's an English paper somebody can write someday. I would like to read you a second, and then second excerpts, and then we can just talk for a while. I'll be happy to take questions or whatever you want to do. And I like to preface this chapter with a story about the writing process. I finally got my lucky break, thanks to Dawn, and got the manuscript version of this in front of the eyes of Bree, the agent at Writer's House. And she said she liked it, but she had some changes to suggest before she started submitting it to publishers. And I confess I bristled just a little. I knew in my heart of hearts that my book was already perfect and did not need changes or amendments. But she, she was going to help me get my book finally published after all these decades of trying. And so I reluctantly agreed to try out some of her changes. And one of the changes that she wanted was, she said, I'd just like another chapter or two about Felix and his life outside of school, his fandoms, his friends, his love interest, who's a boy named Hector that he has a crush on. And I said, all right, fine. And I wrote this chapter, and it's now my favorite chapter in the whole book. So if anybody else here is a writer and you bristle at suggestions from others, let that be an object lesson to you, that editorial is essential and you need to get other eyes to look at your book. And then you need to listen even though you know they're wrong. And just try what they're suggesting. So, in this chapter, much closer to the end of the book, but a kind of interlude in the sort of the building tension about the procedure coming, Felix is on his way to a comics convention with Grandy and with his sister Bee. And there's been an idea that Hector will be there, but they have not arranged to meet together. "11 days to go. It's so odd. In 11 days I might be dead, but I was still excited to wake up this morning on account of ManaCon. I've been looking forward to it for weeks, even before Hector told me about Ash and about maybe being there himself, so I woke up without Mom calling me. Ash is Ash Cortez, who is the creator of Novaglyph, which is Felix's absolute favorite webcomic in the universe. It was interesting giving Felix a cyber life because I couldn't refer to anything real. The internet changes so fast that by the time publication happened, whatever I referred to would be gone. Also, there might have been rights issues. There's a throwaway reference to Minecraft in here, but other than that, all of the internet is totally made up. So Novaglyph, drawn by Ash Cortez, a webcomic. Then I lay there for a little while in this clean, dim, gray light that I usually don't wake up early enough to see. The countdown part of my brain just wanted to hide behind my chair and whimper, but another part of my brain was still like, yay, ManaCon, and the yay part came out on top, so I decided to get out. Of course, even as we pull up to the convention center, I'm already scanning for Hector. It's tricky, because I don't know if he cosplays and if he does as what character, so I can't just scan for his hair and color and Hector shape. I have to look hard at everyone. I don't see him anywhere. Once we're inside, I also immediately start scanning for Ash's table. I don't see it at first. I start to wonder if Hector got it wrong, but then I catch sight of the Novaglyph symbol on a banner, and there she is. I need to mention something else before I go on. There's going to be a reference in a little bit to Jark, J-A-R-Q. That is Felix's own webcomic and the world that he is designing. Ash turns out to be a person of medium height with black hair buzzed short on one side, a nose ring, and tats on her hands and neck. She's wearing layers of mostly black clothes and an unusual hat, and she has a loose, floppy way of sitting in her chair, like she's actually a rag doll instead of a human. She doesn't have much on her table, a stack of comics and some stickers and stuff, and she's flopped there watching the people walk past. By this time, Bee has gone off on her own, so it's just me and Grandy. My heart starts to beat faster, and I step closer to Grandy, who is in burn mode, it being Saturday, with boots and jeans and a big belt buckle, who knows my fandoms and says, there she is. How about it, Felix? Shall we approach? I'm feeling shy. Yes, but you can still go talk to her. I wish I had brought my sketchbook. No, I'm glad I didn't. Come on, Randy says. Bo puts a hand on my shoulder and steers me forward. When we get to the table, Ash looks up and says, "Hey." Her voice is gentle and soft, and her face looks sad, but her eyes are calm. All I can do is nod. "What's your name?" "Felix." "Hey, Felix," she says and smiles, and her smile is sweet and also sad. We look at each other for a second, and then her head drops a little, and her eyes go away, and I think, maybe she's shy too, and that makes it possible for me to say, "I love your..." "Thanks," she says. "Want a sticker or something?" "Yeah, thanks." "You draw, Felix?" I look at her face again, and this time her eyes stay on mine. She does the sad smile again, and this little shrug with one shoulder like, "Yeah, we're just talking." So I start twitching and stuttering and trying to say something about Jark. And she's nodding and listening, and because I know it's safe, I say, "If I had brought my sketchbook, I could show you." And Grandy's hand comes over my shoulder, holding their phone with one of my drawings on the screen. And I make a noise that is supposed to mean, "No, stop!" But it's too late, and the phone is in Ash's hand, and she's swiping, nodding. And I look up at Grandy with my eyes burning like laser beams, but Bo looks right back. So I add a snarl face, but Bo points her eyes at Ash, and when I look back at her, she says, "These are good. I like how you use perspective, and your shading is excellent." Wow. Wow. I feel like I have fireworks going off in my body but I'm back to not being able to speak. Then she turns her head sideways and scrunches up her eyebrows and asks in a hesitating way, "How do you feel about your proportions?" "What? She can see that?" Of course she can. She's Ash Cortez, but I've already stepped the last step to the table. She turns the phone so that we can look at the screen together, and all of a sudden, I can talk. I tell her about how hard it is to get the shoulders and arms and hips and legs to work right. Something's always too long or short or big or small or just shaped wrong somehow. And she tells me how she spends all this time drawing her characters doing odd things that they won't ever do in the comic. Standing on their heads, doing somersaults, scratching their butts, and my brain goes, "Kaboing!" because it's such a good idea. And, well, anyway, we have this amazing conversation, and the fireworks just keep going off, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm about to cry. So I do this sudden awkward goodbye, and we walk away, and my face is burning, but she gives me one last smile and says, "Nice to meet you, Felix. Keep on keeping on." And, well, it was incredible, the whole thing. Nelson, I just had to go into the bathroom again. That's where he goes to cry. Never mind not having enough time to draw everything I want to draw. I don't even have time to draw anything I want to draw. Gah! 1,000 times gah! And I never saw Hector, but Grandy went back to Ash's table and got me a comic. And it's so cool to see the art on paper instead of only on a screen. I would say maybe I could see my art on paper someday too, except my life is probably already over. How can things be so amazing and so horrible at the same time? This living stuff, it hurts worse than dying. I'd rather be dead. No, that's not true. Ah! Yeah, you know what? I'm done for today. The words just don't work anymore right now. So I've literally waited 50 years to read everything I wrote to a room full of people, so thank you very, very much. So let's talk about books. Anybody have a question?
When did you first start writing?
As a child, I was always just messing around, experimenting with poetry. I had the first germ of the idea for this as a teenager.
Wow.
The idea of a person fused with a fourth dimensional being. At the time, I was interested in how that might give you superpowers. And like if you were merged with a fourth dimensional alien, you could detach parts of your body and have them appear somewhere else. Like you could just put your hand inside a locked safe and take something out. And when I finally ended up writing the book, I was interested more in what would it be like to be fused with another being, and you have to either lose them or die. I mean, those are the two choices. And I was interested in creating an out-of-the-ordinary alien. There was actually a fight. If you look closely at the cover, there's this little alien head as one of the dots. And everybody loves the alien head, but I fought against it. I'm cool with the alien head now, but Zyx is specifically not a typical Area 51, early science fiction alien. Zyx is a non-corporeal being with no sense of an individual self who did not know anything about language until becoming fused with Felix. So I wanted to imagine a really unusual alien. But the original idea, the fusion book, goes back to messing around in high school and writing scenes. Yeah. The geeky joy, that's been a consistent thread all along. What else?
Yeah, I love audiobooks. So you said it got recorded for audio. Did you have any input on who did different reading parts at all?
They've been very kind about letting me express ideas about stuff. They don't always follow my thoughts, but I didn't get to pick actors, but I did get to I sent them a 10-page document with ideas about how to deal with Zyx's voice, and there's a bunch of things that depend on how stuff is typed on the page. It's a very visual story. So there's a thing where Felix is playing around with ellipses, with the 3 dots, that you put between words. And how are you going to say that so it doesn't just sound like you're all of a sudden reading really slowly? I got to say a lot, and then they did what they wanted. So it's collaborative, and it's fascinating that it's collaborative. This is not the cover I would have made, etc. But the book is better because all these people had to look at it and had something to say.
Did Zyx exist before the accident?
So you're getting into sort of unwritten backstory here. My sense of Zyx is that there is a sort of place outside our 3 dimensions, which is inhabited by a kind of group intelligence. And there might be individual elements of it, but they think of themselves collectively as a kind of collective consciousness. And they just sort of are like ecstatic Zen masters. They just sort of dance through the cosmos all the time. And it's hard for Zyx to be fused with Felix as well. That gets revealed towards the end, that Zyx's natural existence has been impinged upon by what's happening to them also. But my favorite, I've tried to come up with different phrases to describe Zyx quickly, and my favorite is the Dalai Lama on shrooms. Or a playful Zen master presence. Those are yeah.
You use a couple, so within the book you use gender neutral pronouns that are specific to the book. Is there any reason you made up gender neutral pronouns for the book as opposed to using other established ones?
Yeah, I have this modest ambition to revolutionize the English language. We don't have really workable gender-neutral pronouns. They and their is the closest we've come, but there are grammatical issues with that. One of my 2 children is genderqueer and uses they and their for pronouns, and is also married, and it's a simple problem. Sometimes I'm talking about my kid, and sometimes I'm talking about the couple, and I want different words for those 2 situations, and I don't have them right now. So, this is my best shot at providing a viable alternative.
I guess what I was thinking of was a couple of ones I've sort of seen lurking around on the internet, which are like ZE, ZIR.
Z in here, yeah. Okay, we're getting into deep word geekery, which I'm not sure I want to, impinge on everybody here, right here. I put a lot of word geek thought into these pronouns. My problem with Z and here is if you don't pronounce them really clearly, they start sounding like pronouns we already have. They're too close. And also, they're not related to each other. All the pronoun groups that we have right now share a common first letter. So I wanted a set of words which even if you pronounced only the consonant or only the vowel, would still be unique, all based on the same letter, and which didn't any of them sound like any other words we already have, with the exception of Venn diagrams, but I decided it was okay to have that. But yeah, I thought a lot. I put a lot of sort of word geek thought into it. Pronoun design.
I haven't read the book, but does the vaporized father show up again? Is he blasted somewhere, or am I giving you the germ for a new book?
Don't tell us.
I cannot comment on that question. Yeah, no spoiler alerts.
This one wondering if you can maybe give us a peek behind the curtain at the work in progress. What's next for you?
Sure. I'm a little in advance in announcing this publicly because I haven't actually signed the contract, but I do have a contract for book 2 with Viking. Working title is Zenobia July, Cyber Private Eye. And in keeping with what I've been trying to accomplish in Felix, there's a whole bunch of queer characters, and in community. It's about a 14-year-old trans girl with a troubled past and advanced coder hacker skills who solves cyber crimes with the help of her genderqueer best friend and her cool lesbian aunties while attempting to navigate middle school. And you heard it here first.
How did you decide to write for this group, this age group, I should say?
Well, I didn't, actually. I just wrote the book I wanted to write, a book that I would have been happy to discover on a library shelf myself somewhere. But I didn't have any particular age range in mind. I thought I was probably writing what they call a young adult novel. My agent thinks in terms of categories because she's in the business. And there are whole separate departments for children's books and middle grade and young adult and new adult and adult stories. And your book has to fit into one of those because it's a whole different team of people for each category. And she said, this reads like middle grade. Can we age Felix down? Okay. It's a gentle story. There's no sex in it. There's no sort of gratuitous sort of violence or killing, which I guess are some of the hallmarks of young adult literature now. It reads gentle, it reads nice, sweet. So she said middle grade, and she said, could you age Felix down? And I said, you can publish my book? Absolutely. But I hope it will find a lot of readership amongst older kids and adults. It's just a story. The categories are part of the business, I think, rather than inherent to the writing. And I didn't hold anything back. I didn't, quotes, dumb this down at all. I mean, there's some really sophisticated philosophy in here. There's concepts of the infinite and our relationship to it. There's mysticism. It's a sophisticated story.
Can you name some of your favorites in the middle grade area?
Oh boy. Books that inspired me growing up, the books that I loved when I was the age that the kids are who will be reading this, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, C.S. Lewis's Narnia series, although that has not weathered changing ideas about colonialism and culture very well. There's some really sort of icky Arab stereotypes, for example, but I loved it at the time. Watership Down, fantastic book, one of the most thoroughly well-imagined fantasy stories I've ever read. The 13 Clocks, as I already mentioned, other Thurber books, The White Deer, The Wonderful O, which is full of wordplay. It's about pirates who come to an island and steal the letter O from all of the inhabitants, so they don't have it. They have to make do with the other 25 letters. Deep word geekery. The Jungle books by Rudyard Kipling about Mowgli, who's raised by wolves. The Phantom Tollbooth by Norman Juster. And especially, my 6th grade teacher, Miss Musgrove, read us a book called The Tombs of Atuan, which is book 2 of the Earthsea trilogy by Ursula K. Le Guin. She was an unusual teacher. That was a really strange book to read to a room full of random 6th graders, but I loved it. I was transported by that book. It's part of a trilogy, and I reread the whole trilogy pretty much annually. And it is as close as I had in my life to a sacred text. Sort of, it has in it my best understanding of the infinite, or the afterlife, if there is one, sort of how we become part again of the larger swirling eventually in our lives. So those are a few. There's a bunch more. All the way in the back.
Would you talk a little bit about your writing process, what time of day, how you do it?
I have to be alone. I do some at home, and I do, if if I need to, I have a room with a door that I can close. Or I go to a library. I like libraries and coffee shops if they have, reliable Wi-Fi and comfortable seats. And a place where I can sit where nobody can see my screen, because I'm horribly self-conscious about it while I'm doing it. I try to write a little every day. Try to set a word goal. I mean, I have a deadline for Zenobia. I have to write a 60,000 word novel and hand it in by the end of September, so I'm on deadline. A deadline is a beautiful thing. I love a good deadline. And just a little every day. Part of the story of Felix is NaNoWriMo. Do people know what that means? National Novel Writing Month. This is a fantastic thing that happens worldwide every November. Everybody who wants to participate, it's free, it's voluntary, you just sign up on a website and do it. The idea is to write 50,000 words of rough draft of something, anything, in 30 days. And you're doing it in concert with 1 million other people all around the planet. And it's the perfect combination of you're still by yourself in a room with the language, but there's other people working too. And I got a lot of Felix written in actual writing sprints. I met a group of people on Facebook who were all in Maine. I was living in Maine at the time, and we were the Maine Nanos. And we would actually gather in real time online on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and somebody would type, "All right, go!" And for 15 minutes we would all type madly, and then we would compare word counts. And some of the scenes that I wrote in those mad word sprints are more or less intact in the final book. So the thing I have learned is, if you're going to write a book, you're going to write a rough draft, and it really is a rough draft. It's like if you're making a sculpture out of a block of wood, this is hacking with an axe. And you do not go back and shape, you just hack something out. You just keep moving forward, just write. Don't fix the chapter you just wrote, write the next one. And after a while, you have this great mess of false starts and failed threads and stuff, and then you can shape it. So, but a little work every day. That's the key.
So do you have a sense of where the book is ending when you start, or does it evolve? The story.
I have a provisional idea of where the book might be headed. Very early on, my characters acquire their own personalities, voices, and ideas, and argue with me and go off in their own directions and will not take direction. And so books end up moving in strange directions I wasn't anticipating. But that's part of the fun. One of the things that's amazing about this is the writing process, once you're going to be published, is laborious. I mean, your agent wants changes, and you send it back and forth a couple of times, and then the editor wants changes, and you send it back and forth a couple of times, and then there's an edit and a copy edit. I have read this dozens of times, and every time I read it, I become a little bit more detached, and it feels more and more like a thing that I didn't create at all. It's just a sort of weird sensation of having been placed in charge of this artifact as a kind of devotional trust. It's amazing. It's like, oh, this is my book? Okay, if you say so.
Did you comment on the cover design process?
Pretty cut and dried. They said, this is what we want to do. And I said, I don't like it. Could you change X and Y? And they said, well, we'll change X a little bit. And that's yeah.
How would you have done it?
I actually got to design a cover with help because I self-published. Another stage of Felix's life was self-publication. And we had there was other stage, which was we published, my eldest child, Cygnus, and I published an illustrated version in real time online because it's a countdown. It's a countdown that takes 30 days, and Felix is very precise about what day of the week it is and what time he's posting and so on. And so I acquired fused-with-Zyx.com, and we posted it in real time. So if Felix was writing on a Tuesday night, we posted his thing on a Tuesday night with size illustrations, which a lot of people thought was a cool idea, but hardly anybody actually read it. We also did a final chapter in audio drama form, so it was very multimedia. But we used one of Yz's pictures of kind of Felix in space. I had a cover I really liked, but you bow to the knowledge of the industry. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't understand. Felix X, Y, Z. And the alien name is,
Okay, the alien's name is actually, you ready for this? It has a letter in it we don't normally have in English. The alien's name is actually Zyx. Let me read you that section if I can find it. I'll just explain it. So this is Grandy is my stand-in for word geekery in the story. And Grandy's idea in naming this previously unnamed alien was that all of their names end with XYZ, which is like the X, Y, and Z axes of a graph of three-dimensional space. Zyx is a fourth-dimensional alien, so there's an extra angle that we don't have a name for. So Grandy invented a 27th letter of the alphabet spelled with an asterisk, pronounced. And then the alien's name is that sound plus Felix is spelled backwards. So, but Zyx for short, because nobody but Grandy can say Zyxalef without someone over it. Zyx, Z-Y-X.
Z-Y?
Z-Y-X is
Oh,
the,
I see.
it's backwards, yeah.
Okay, I get it.
It's really geeky.
Yeah,
I like the color. People love the alien head. They were right. I was wrong. The alien, it's a good book cover.
Do you, are there book tours that you have to do, or are there things that you have to do?
I've written a bunch of guest blog posts, so I'm active online. The people that I turn to for advice said there's not much point as a debut author going to some random city and showing up at a bookstore, because if they've never heard of you, they won't come see you.
Right.
So I'm doing a book party up in Portland, where I used to live, on Thursday night. But other than that, school visits in the fall, things like that.
Can I give a shout out though?
Yeah.
I was in New York City right before Book Expo last week at School Library Journal's Day of Dialogue, and it was all the publishers and pitching new books, and there was a big giant stack of the book there.
Yay.
Being pitched to everybody, so, yeah.
Thank you.
So, and I just felt terrible that I didn't take a picture.
That's
So,
lovely.
yeah.
It's amazing. It's out there. You never know who's going to find it now, because libraries, schools, bookstores, online. Once you send your book out, it goes everywhere. It's astonishing.
If Steven Spielberg calls, answer.
Yeah, no doubt. And I have some really clever business people. I have a really good agent and a strong publishing house, and so there's like a whole team Felix now. It's amazing. And stuff happens I don't even know about. I found out by accident the other day that I'm speaking at a big convention in Missouri in November. It's like, oh, okay. Yes, I have that weekend free.
I've been complaining pretty soon.
Well, anyone else? I'll be signing books after and chatting with
Yeah,
whoever.
there's lots of
and there's-
treats at the back, beverages, there's water there and yummy treats, and we obviously have books for sale, and Lisa will sign and inscribe
Mhm.
your, okay. And so enjoy, and thank you again for coming out and giving